Bro, and we back.
Hey, and we're back. Y'all, we've been gone for 2 weeks, y'all.
It
Been a
seems like
long
I hope, I
time.
hope, I hope people
Left
haven't forgotten
me.
about us and they pop up here and they at least check us out. You know what I'm saying? But if they
right.
don't, we're gonna keep doing what we do because we like to be consistent.
It's
You know,
all
persistent, persistent, paid. That's what we're talking about. It'll all come together. Our guest is taking some time right now. Should be popping up in a second. So until that
I
time, y'all, let's just. There's been a whole lot of stuff that's been going on, man. I will tell y'all
hold
this
on.
personally. I finally got a chance to get away from Durham, North Carolina. Y'all know I've been since Steph passed. I've been sitting here taking care of everything, doing everything. Didn't have a getaway. I did run to Atlanta real quick for a weekend to take my kids before school started with them back in 2019. Then I've been here ever since because we went right into that pandemic. And so I finally got away. Had a little weekend out in Miami. That was cool, man. I had a good time, man.
MIA.
I had a good time. I got to go back. I got to go back. It's still live. Um, what's been going on with y'all, man? Since I last saw you, what y'all been up to?
summer break and enjoying the summer. I have a girls trip coming up with my besties, and we are so excited. Fort Lauderdale will never be the same.
Y'all going to Florida, right?
Fort Lauderdale, yeah.
Yeah, y'all going to Florida.
It's about 9 of us going.
Yeah, y'all need to get a boat and go out. That's what we did.
We already have one. Yeah, we
Boat.
got one.
That joint was
Oh,
hey, that joint was hype. It's hype.
Yeah, we got
Actually,
it.
it was.
it's
I was in Aventura, so it's right by Miami. It's still considered a little bit Fort Lauderdale. So it's all
So I'm
right.
excited. I'm
It's all
excited.
right. What y'all think about my girl
have
and
fun,
the
have
Olympics?
fun.
What y'all think about the Olympics?
You know what was funny about that, man? It fell right after everybody was talking about black girl magic and how the black women were gonna be dominating the Olympics. They even had the meme out come out with the gold earrings as with
Yeah,
the
as
Olympic
Olympic
hoops.
hoops.
Yeah, and then like right after that, like oh, they smashed her and put her out the Olympics.
Yeah,
Kind of upset the black girl magic. But then
yeah,
after that, they talking about maybe the whole Olympics might be shut down at this particular point with COVID spreading over there.
well, yeah, I put up a post, kind of. I like to play devil's advocate. There was a whole lot of people that came for my neck. I put up a post, kind of siding with Richardson, like this, that, and the third, and the people wanted to educate me. I said, what about Michael Phelps? Everybody wanted to educate me on how his was different, and I knew the whole story. I didn't even argue back. I let people go because I wanted to see people interact, and it's amazing because I told them, I see you interacting on this thread. I want to see you on Front Porch Discussions on Thursday. Let's talk. Ain't nobody popping up though. They had a whole lot of
Mm.
banter going back and forth, and so I understood the whole thing that he did. And I understood that that was a rule. She knew it was a rule. It was a rule she should not have broken. She's a young girl. She made a mistake. She owned up to it. I get it. I understand all of that. So with that side, that's solid. I think she needed to have some punishment. Um, and she wasn't running in that first race. I don't think she should have been denied the relay, but that's something else. And I think the Olympic Committee needs to go back and look at marijuana itself because all the states are legalizing it. And she was actually in a state where it was legal. And it's not a performance enhancement drug. So what do you do? I mean, that's not in place yet. So we got to go by what's in place. So I understand her punishment. She shouldn't have done it. She's missing out on millions. I get all of that. But we just got to take this and move forward and try to revamp some things because I'm sure that would be the first occurrence of an athlete going to the Olympics or participating because marijuana is legal now. So, but I
So
don't
But
like
tell
the
me,
fact that in another sense, it seems like they got an attack on all the black women. They said Simone Biles was just too good. She got some points for something taken or regulated, whatever it was. The two girls from Africa said their testosterone levels were too high. But then they got a man participating in a woman's sport when he said he used to be a man, but now he ain't a man no more. And I guess his testosterone levels just dropped. You know what I'm saying? So it's a whole lot of mess. The girl that's a swimmer, you can't wear caps over afros. got to do something else. I don't know. It just seems crazy, man. Real crazy.
They can't take the shine either way. Like we always have dominated Summer Olympics. Like 100-meter dash, a black woman. Come on,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
Um,
They
yeah,
so
I just thought it was
what events will she participate in?
Nothing now. She's not in it. Period. Gone out of there. She could have made. She could have been in the relay, but the committee or whoever else, I guess, on the U.S. side decided, nah, not gonna touch it. We're not gonna do it. Not gonna let her be a member of the relay team. So they deny her access for the relay team. So she's packing it up and going to the crib.
She'll be fine.
Yeah, she's gonna be fine. She'll be back. She'll be back. She'll be back next Olympic,
She'll
and
be
all in between, winning everything, breaking records.
yeah.
It's all good. Nike kept her, so she didn't lose that sponsorship. They backing her 100%.
And
You
she's
know,
gonna get some more after this.
oh yeah, it's gonna come back.
Oh yeah,
So she lost it up front, but she'll get it back. She'll get it back.
yeah.
So tonight we have a very special guest with us. We have Miss T. Taylor. She's
Hi,
gonna talk to us.
everybody.
How you doing? She's gonna talk to us a little
greetings.
bit about police reform and defunding the police and all that kind of good stuff. That's been a hot topic. She has personally taken on the task of revamping some things to see if we can make our policing better in the United States. So, Miss Taylor, could you please just give us a little background on yourself? Tell us what you've been working on, where you're from, where you went to school, the organizations you belong to, so on and so forth. I know it's going to be a whole lot of ooping going on in a minute. Um, but with that being said, I give it to Miss T. Taylor, everybody.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? Of course, he introduced me by name. My name is Talisha Taylor, and most people call me T. Taylor. I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I attended Lincoln University, which is the first HB degree granting first HBCU. Lincoln University started granting degrees in 1854. So I want to definitely give acknowledgement to the university. And I'm here today to mainly promote the Leah Act. Last year this time I was participating in a lot of the marches, and I'm also a teacher at Enloe Magnet High School. I have a bachelor's degree in physics, and so I teach honors chemistry, AP physics, and physical science at Enloe Magnet High School in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am the advisor for the Black Student Union. So a lot of my students were participating in the march. And what I noticed while I was at the march was, I'm not going to say the lack of direction, but the lack of a message. We all say hands up, don't shoot. The police already know that. They know that that is a sign of surrender. So these young people, they've been out there marching, they've been saying that, and still we receive the same results. And what I noticed this summer is, I support the young people. And when you look at generations, they're still trying to fight the same things that we've been fighting for generations, which is basically the lack of equality. So as these young people begin to march, and then unfortunately it turned into riots, the point is, when we said hands up, don't shoot, when we marched, you didn't hear us. But the minute that you look at the newspapers and they said America was on fire, well, now you can hear us. Now you hear the message that the young people have been making for the past years since Tamar Rice and all the other incidents. And so they heard that message, but the point was, what was the message? And at that point, I was inspired to look at what are we trying to get them to do. So I sat down, it took me 2 months, and I wrote the Leah Act. It's called the Law Enforcement Accountability Act. And it's different from the Police Brutality Act that Congress is working on. Right now, Congress is working on the Police Brutality Act. In my opinion, it is a band-aid. It will not solve the problem because since last year when we did all that marching, there has been absolutely no difference. Some of the police enforcement agencies are looking at the Police Brutality Act and laughing. We already do this. So the question is, what needs to be done? What's different? And how should we approach it? The Leah Act is an accountability act, and it holds every officer accountable for what they do. And now let me begin to explain it to you. The first thing it does is it defines police law. Well, it's actually LEO, enforcement agencies. So that covers your local police your local police office. It covers your state. It covers any part of national, which includes ICE and all those other agencies. Any law enforcement officer is covered under the Leah Act. And this is where it differs. It establishes them as a profession. We have lawyers that have to take the bar. Why? Because if they don't know their profession, then they're putting people's lives at risk, whether they'll be convicted of a crime or not. Even when we go down to doctors also have to take and become certified. Law enforcement is the only agency that have people lives in their hands, and we really have no accountability to look at their training, to look at how they maintain their standards. So the Law Enforcement Accountability Act first defines it as a profession, and then it requires that they become licensed. And with that, even when you think about cosmetologists, they have to take a test, they have to become licensed. So what does this licensure means? It means that we need a national database, and we've heard that a little bit, but the Leah Act kind of defines the national database and what we're going to do with that. With the national database, they become licensed in different areas. Number one, in training. A lot of people, and some of the specifics of the Leah Act, and at the end of our conversation, he'll provide a link so that everybody can read through the 12-page act themselves. One of the big things is, how do police respond to a riot, and how do they respond to a protest? Protesting is legal in the United States. As we look and reflect on what happened last year, some of the protests turned into riots. And I was out there, but I had tear gas fired upon me. I had rubber bullets fired upon me, but this is when we were protesting. So one of the big things we want to do is train police in the difference between the two. And in the Leah Act, it states that in the intent that a protest becomes a riot, they must announce at this point, we are treating this protest as a riot and give people an opportunity to leave the scene who don't want to be participants of the riot. And after that, that gives that window for them to react with a riot response. And it was strategically written because during the Geneva Convention, we know how long, decades ago, the United States is the only country who believes that they need to utilize gas, chemicals, and things like that. So we cannot just say, hey, we want to ban it. They've been arguing that point for decades. And I don't want that to be what holds the Leah Act from passing. So what I did was state that they need to be trained on the difference between a protest and a riot. And in the event that it becomes a riot, they announce it and give people 5 minutes before they give a riot response. And that was one of the big problems I saw with what happened. Okay, so we want the licensure. They'll get proper training, but there's certain things that they need to be trained on, and it's coming down nationally. And the second thing is, even with that training, they also need to have a background check to see if they're associated with any racist, neo-Nazi, any of those type of white supremacy organizations, because that affects their decisions when they're out in the street, the way that you've come up, the way you've been trained. And yes, we know you can go away from that, but we want to make sure they're not active members of these organizations. They also have to, of course, we know they go through their physical test. They have to pass a psychological evaluation, because you need to be able to make a split-second decision on those streets, and we don't want that split-second decision to occur, because I'm as a whole person, they're just not there. And there's some people, everybody can't be a police officer. It's a demanding job. So with the licensure, that's something else we have to do. Now, as we look at police brutality, the Leah Act gives levels of offenses. There's 5 levels of offenses, and they're defined. The level 1, it speaks about people using verbal abuses all the way up to level 5. When we look at the George Floyd case and we look at Chauvin, we know that he had some, they already stated that he had some things on his record where he had done some things, but we don't understand exactly what had he done in the past. We don't know. But with the Leah Act, he had 3 level 2 offenses, 3 level 3s. We know because it's identified in the Leah Act, and we're able to understand exactly what offenses were made. I'm just pulling up my iPad so I can make sure that I'm hitting on everything that we want to talk about in the Leah Act. So those are some of the things that we want to do. In addition to that, we want to clearly define misunderstandings between law enforcement officers and subjects. These things, like hands up, don't shoot. We think that it's understood, but unless it's written within a law, then we can't address it as an understood issue. You understand what I'm saying? So we need to definitely identify exactly what is submission, what is the lack of aggression, because many times we see these young people, and I'm not saying young people, but people of color resisting arrest. We need to identify what is resisting arrest and what is not. If we identify these actions are not resisting arrest, now we can hold them accountable. He had his hands up. You've been trained on that. That's exactly what the law says. It's not a law, and that's where we run into a lot of our problems. De-escalation training, we're watching these police officers go in, and they're causing a lot of the problems in these situations. Conflict resolution. Any unfortunate situation where we have the police being called on some household issues, or especially conflict resolution comes into place where we have people with mental illness. And when we talk about defunding the police, what we mean is don't send out 7 police officers, send out someone who's been trained to deal with mental illness, who's not a part of the police force, or maybe they need to incorporate that role in their facility. But conflict resolution means that they will then take control of the situation and assess the person and realize, this is not someone who's not being compliant. This is someone who's having a mental breakdown, whether it be depression, whether it be stress, whether it be some other type of schizophrenic reaction. We have those people in place to give the proper treatment instead of, oh, he's showing aggression, let's shoot him. Of course, racial profiling, and the difference between racial profiling and a criminal profile. If a store is robbed and they say, okay, this man has on a red shirt, black pants, that's a criminal profile. And we expect them to do that. But then we need to make sure they understand the difference between racial profiling. Every Afro-American driving a car is not committing a crime. So those are some of the other issues we want to make sure that they reach out in terms of responsive training. And then one of the big things that the Leah Act speaks about is force continuum training. There's different efforts that you can use instead of using your gun. And for example, and I know it's a complex issue when we talk about force, but there's a company that has this device that you can fire as a subject's leg if they're running away from you, and it'll cause them to trip and fall, and thus you can execute your arrest. But they're not using any of these alternatives. They're going straight for their guns. And we know that because we see all these cases. So these are some of the types of training that we definitely want to put in place, and equipment training. I can just show you all the numbers of cases where people have been hit by rubber bullets. And what we don't realize is a rubber bullet was intended to be shot at the ground and then ricochet up, but they're aiming them directly into the crowd. So they need to be held accountable for this level of training. And that's why we need it to come from a national level. Every organization holds their own level of training. And I don't want to read through all the issues that I have with training, but those are some of them. So now let's talk about what happens when you violate these laws. The same way you're driving down the street with your car, if you're going 5 miles over the speed limit, you get a level 1 ticket, 2 points on your license. But if you're going 20 miles, you get 4 points on your license. So we need to set up this same license, this same point system with police officers. So when you start to act and do certain things, you get more points against your license. Once you accrue a level 4 or a level 5 defense, you're pulled out of the full field. You're no longer working in the streets. You have to go back to training. And if you can't get through training without doing level 4 offenses, then you're just going to lose your licensure. And that when you look at Chauvin's records, there was a young man, I think the young man was 14 years old, and he did the same exact action. He put his knee in this young man's neck for 14 minutes, which is beyond what he did with George Floyd. Well, that's when his licensure should have been revoked, but there's no laws in place to do such. And that's what the Leah Act does. It addresses the individual officer based on what they're doing, and it helps protect us, because now that we're going on after the individual officer, they now have a direct effect of their actions. Currently, they have no effect of their actions. They think they're being covered by the police force, and they think that they can continue to do what they're doing. The Leah Act also addresses the response of the entire police force. Every police agency is also judged the same way school districts are judged. If the students are not performing, school district can get taken over by the state. Well, if we're looking at it and your law enforcement agency, regardless of whether it's local, whether it's state, if it's not performing and if your officers have all these offenses, then we need to take you over. And first the state, it depends on the locality. If it's local, then you look at a county taking it over, then the state taking it over, and all this can be overseen by the agencies that are put in place within the Leah Act. I'm just going to stop because I don't know if you want more questions or you want me to keep going on explaining some things. I have more to say, but.
Eric, Janai, y'all got a question yet?
Yeah, I did. So, because certain states have a high brutality rate, would the Leah Act begin in those states, or would it be like, statewide? Because we know that, like I said, police brutality is higher in some states.
Well, actually, it's going to because it's a national plan, it needs to be incorporated nationally. That way we can the licensure is going to be held on a national database. So we can't say, let's just look at Minnesota, let's just look at Baltimore. We need to look at every city, and we need to just start it nationally. Because again, as I spoke of, when you look at doctors and they have to have malpractice, it may have started locally, but they had to do it nationally. So I'm going to say nationally as my answer to that question. Other trainings that they need, like I said, we talked about shooting at unarmed suspects. And of course, the only time that you use force, that deadly force, is if your life is being threatened. Time after time, and I can't even call the countless names from the top of my head. This young man in Georgia was sitting in his car. He went to the bar. He was too drunk to drive, so he fell asleep in the car. Well, the next morning, the police, they confront him, and he told them the story. I fell asleep in my car. I'm too drunk. So at that point, they could have escorted the young man home. Well, he had slept it off by this point. Instead, He walks away and they shoot him in the back and they kill him. That is direct negligence. There was nobody's life being threatened, and he was not to be treated in that mannerism. But unfortunately, there is no law in place that addresses their actions. And as I stated at the beginning of the show, the Police Brutality Act, it does not address their direct actions. So not only shooting at unarmed suspects, shooting in a vehicle, we saw that case, requesting removal from the car, the point system itself, all these things need to be addressed to, I guess, look at each individual and hold them accountable. And a lot of people say, oh, you're going against law enforcement, but that's not the case, because in the event that you have no points on your system and you're out there doing your job, I have relatives that are police officers, and there's some good police officers. Well, if you're doing your job, you don't have to pay the fee so that you have the insurance. You don't have to pay the fee. That's going to be covered. In addition to that, if you have points in your licensure, you can't apply for positions and move up. You can't be, it depends on how you set up, the deputy, the lieutenant. You can't move up if you have points on your licensure. And this is going to help with that nepotism that's in these systems and start pulling out those individuals who are not doing things properly, because we're going to start filling in the police force with people who are taking their oath and their job seriously, and we're going to change the identification and what we see now as police officers in the streets. So that's one of the other things. Reporting every use of force, that's required. Yes, we know that they will use force, but once they report it, they should feel free, like, I had to report it. And it's a system where it's not going to be harder, it's not going to be a lot of paperwork. They'll be able to do some check-offs so that every incident of use of force is identified. In addition to that, is actually accountable as to whether it was necessary or whether it was not. So those are some of the things that we talk about. Licensure suspension. If your license is suspended, you will not get paid. Some of these officers could do things that we know are wrong, and they sit at home for months, but they're getting paid. If your license is suspended due to negligence, then you're not getting paid. Let's make that a clear law and understand that. So some of them don't even care about that. Licensure revocation. In the event that your license is revoked, you can't apply in any other locality as a law enforcement officer. They're moving from state to state, county to county, and people don't understand or know that they have a record. So some people just going from county to county and causing ruckus all throughout, and there's no accountability for their actions. The database for driver's license is national now. So if your license is suspended in one state, you can't move to another state. Well, we need to do the same thing with law enforcement. One other area, now I'm going to start talking about some of the areas that we address. Definitely body cameras. We require they have body cameras. A lot of them are getting around it by not turning them on. Well, guess what? If your body cam, that is a requirement. If you don't turn it on, you get 1 point against your licensure. We want to hold them accountable. So now they're like, hey, you taking food on my family miles, I need to turn my camera on. So we're requiring that they turn on their dashboards, their body cams, things of that nature. And it has a duty to intervene. If I'm sitting there and my partner is going out of control and doing something against the rights of an individual, I have a duty to intervene. And those other 3 officers on that scene of the George Floyd case can be charged with the same exact directive that we had charged Chauvin with, because they did not intervene. And that's another thing. Now, verbal warnings prior to use of force. Some people, like I said, they're just using their force and they're not making sure they do any verbal directive. Retaliatory force. There was a young lady who videotaped the incident, got in her car and drove away, but the police followed her. and then they attacked her. That's retaliatory. There was no reason to follow this young lady, to attack this young lady. And it's other cases where retaliatory force is definite. All of this is written now as a law so that we can hold them accountable for it. Another big issue is K9 compliance. I had videos upon videos where canines are attacking people, tearing into their skin. There was a 70-year-old woman in Baltimore who went out to take her trash out, and she was attacked by a canine. And she looked at the police officers. This video is so sad. And she said, you know, what did I do? Well, what they said to her is, oh, it was an accident. We were looking for someone else. A canine who is properly trained will stop their reaction upon command. And some of these police officers, they're not using a proper command. Well, guess what? If your canine tears into somebody's skin, that's the same level of refraction that you receive because you are responsible for that canine. And we need to make sure we include that because if you go to the Leah Act on Facebook, I have tons of videos and you'll see that I'm not just, you know, we're not creating this stuff out of our head. The Leah Act was written because these incidents occur and we need to control them and stop them from occurring. And now sexual contact. In some counties, it is not illegal for a law enforcement officer to have sexual contact with a subject. And they are using that as means, and we can look it up. They're using that as means for people to get out of tickets. And they're not, first of all, your time is being charged by taxes. So why are you engaged in any sexual contact while you're on duty at all? There was a young lady, 18 years old in Texas, who was sexually molested on a dash cam. And the way they got it, the prosecutor said, oh, the officers made a poor decision. Well, that's what a criminal does. They make a poor decision. So guess what? They need to be charged as a criminal. And her attorney just couldn't believe it because he said, oh, we got it on camera. This is an open shut case. But it was, again, there's no law that they broke. So when we originally looked at law enforcement, when you look at the Law Enforcement Act, we expect police officers to uphold the law. But now, unfortunately, we need to write laws that says as a law enforcement agency, you can't do these things, although there's laws for individuals not to do these things. So the same things they're arresting us for, they're out there doing, and they're being covered because they think that, you know, they don't have to do or follow the law the same way we do. Abuse of power is included. It's illegal for you to use your power to illegally obtain information against the subjects or an abuse of power is the biggest one that a lot of people might find some resolution in terms of their cases. And then there's the banning of the chokehold, no knock warrants. I don't want to go into detail. This is a 12-page act, but the double checking of addresses, how many countless addresses have they kicked the door down and it's not even a correct address? They kicked the door down to this family. And I've just been reading so many cases. I can't even recall where this happened. The young lady was getting out the shower. They took off her towel and she was in the room, unclothed, bare naked, in front of 12 police officers. And not one person offered her anything to clothe herself with. And this is now an ongoing thing. And that, again, is something that they need to, and they were at the wrong address. Meanwhile, the man that they wanted walked past them, who was happened to be an individual of a European descent, while they were attacking this Afro-American female who had nothing to do and did not fit the description of the crime being committed at the time. The other thing we want to look at is compliant arrest. I said this before, but we just want to identify what a client arrest is so that everybody understands, and we will get rid of those non-compliant laws with the arrest procedure. Of course, everybody knows that the Miranda acts and laws. Well, now we need the same thing with the arrest procedure. You can't arrest me for resisting arrest. I must first be charged with a crime. Prior to arresting any individual, you must announce what crime they are being arrested for. There are hundreds of cases that are being thrown out of court because it was resisting arrest, but there never was an arrest being committed in the first place. Oh, you're resisting. What am I resisting? So the arrest procedure being defined definitely addresses that. And I know we talk about Karen, the verbal filing of false police reports. There's actually an addressing of Karens, people who call, who know that they're doing this, whether it's against gender, religion practice, age, disability, sexual orientation, national origin. If you call the police and you give any type of false report, the level of the report that you filed, you are subject to that same responsive the same responsive charge will be made against you. And we all know that incident in New York when the lady said that the man was attacking her and he had the whole thing on video. Well, then she should be charged with physical abuse because that's what she said that he did and he didn't do it. So we need to address these Karens. In I think it's in Michigan somewhere where we start talking about video cameras. Because of video cameras, it's been happening for years, but now because of technology, we're seeing it firsthand. And some of these states are now calling that, and the state just passed, I think it's a county just passed a law saying that it is illegal to videotape a police officer in action. And we need to cut that off the board, right? Because that's our only proof that they're doing these things illegally. And they're now saying that it should have been illegal for the people in the George Floyd case because they were interfering with a police arrest. So the Leah Act says that as long as you are a certain amount of feet away and you're not in interference with the actual arrest, it is legal for you to obtain video footage, audio footage, or whatever you need to provide proof that these allegations are taking place. So that's another big thing. I talked about the excessive force insurance. We talked about racism. And we need to make sure we understand this is not an attack on police. It is addressing crimes committed by the police. If you're not committing any crimes, it shouldn't bother you as a police officer. So that's one of the big things we want to talk about with the Leah Act. And I think that kind of, I tried to summarize most of it. Like I said, it's a 12-page document. And I definitely, I'm looking at my Sura and Marla, who just talks about the Brown case in Elizabeth City. And this young man was sitting in his car and they opened fire on this young man. And they stated that I think they were trying to serve a warrant. And again, it was just excessive force. Just because you're a police officer doesn't mean you are above the law. And those are the things that the Leah Act needs to address. In the event that the Leah Act is put in place, there are so many of these cases that we definitely, when we look at citizens arrest, that's another thing that I neglected to speak about. And this is the Amir case, Amir Ahmad, where he was jogging and they attacked him and they killed him. Oh, we had some break-ins in our neighborhoods. You cannot be a citizen police officer unless the police are actively subduing a subject and they can't control it. That's the only time you can act as a citizen, or you witness a crime taking place. But you cannot act as a citizen based on a subject that you assume, think, or believe that they are committing a crime. So we definitely address citizens arrest and we put laws in place so that, again, we can charge all those individuals. And right now, a lot of these law agencies, one of the things that if you look at some of these prosecutors, they're like, the laws are not there. It's hard to charge a police officer. Well, guess what? The Leah Act, we're putting the laws out there. We're making it a lot easier to hold these police officers accountable for their actions. When you look at ICE, We are the United States of America. We're supposed to be the morally conscious country. However, at the border, there are over 8,000 cases just this year, and it is July, of women who are raped at the border by ICE agents. This is why we say law enforcement agencies. Anybody who represents any law that is controlled by the United States is held accountable for all these actions. And those young women, they don't have to be citizens of the United States. If you are in our territory, then we need to treat you as a person. And that's just like visiting another country. We are still held accountable to treat those women with respect. Some of them young girls, as young as 12, are being raped at the border by ICE agents in these camps, these detainments, and children. And it's a sad thing. We need to hold them accountable. Not one case have you heard about those ICE agents as what's actually happening at the border. Not one case. And the Leah Act is now going to make it so that those cases can actually start going to court. You look at there was another situation in Pennsylvania at a youth detainment center where those kids were being sexually abused by some of the CEOs that was in charge. And by putting this law in effect, you could be surprised at how many people have been abused. And what we're going to do, we can't change the individual or prevent it from happening, but we can stop them from continually doing the same practice for 30 years. And then it eventually resulting in the death of some of our individuals. Now, as I want to talk about the politicians. The law I wrote, I was out there with the young people and I realized there was no message. So we want the Leah Act because now there's a message behind police brutality. We want you to sign the Leah Act. We need this in place. It has been over almost 50 or 60 years and we still haven't seen any improvement. We need to just nip this in the bud, get done with it so we can move on to other issues affecting America, affecting Black America, and other issues that we need to deal with. Police brutality, I mean, the Leah Act just covers it. Put this in place. Stop letting the politicians take our vote for granted. You said you were in office. You said you want to represent the Black people. Support the Leah Act. Sign the Leah Act. Make it a law. When you look at some of these individuals, and I don't really want to get into name calling because a lot of people have been given a Leah Act but haven't taken it up yet. But I will start putting some of these public names out in public because these are officials that supposedly speak for the Black people, speak for the Black voice. But what have you done as a public figure? You out there, oh, it's a problem. Oh, it's a crime. You always on your little soapbox. But what are you doing to change these crimes, to stop these things from happening? And that's what, unfortunately, we as a people have to start doing. I have a Black male child. I don't want him to be a victim of police brutality. So I wrote the Leah Act to protect every individual, and not only Black individuals, but all the individuals. And some of the laws weren't written because of things that happened to Black America. Because once they get into the habit of abuse, they do it to everybody, not just us. So one individual, he was a paraplegic, but he wasn't Black. He was a European or white American. And they told him to get out the car. And he told the officer he was using his hands to hold himself up onto the dash. I'm paraplegic. Snatched this man out the car. He had scars on the side of his face. The man couldn't walk. He couldn't stand. So there was absolutely no respect. So people don't want to stand up behind us now. It's not a racist law. It's a righteous law. It's going to protect all Americans and it's going to stop police brutality.
Miss Taylor, question for you.
Sure.
With all of the laws that are currently out, what you're saying with the Leah is that none of the laws that are currently out are written in a way where we can hold law officers accountable.
Exactly. And that's what makes the Leah Act different from the Police Brutality Act. And I think somewhere somebody created a Karen law, but that's only that one area. The police the Leah Act is all inclusive. And the fact that I said at the beginning, we want to make them accountable by saying this is a profession, that's what the difference in the Leah Act is. So now I'm no longer covered by my immunity because, of course, if a police officer kills somebody committing a crime, let's say it's a bank robbery, they are in a shootout and they kill an officer, of course, immunity, yeah, they're not going to be charged with murder. But in neglect instances, yeah, you need to be charged with murder. We can't just say when you kill somebody when you're in duty. If it is neglect, then yes, you can be charged. And that's what the Leah Act does. It holds them accountable. And that's the difference between a lot of these acts. They're saying, hey, don't do this. Okay, we know they shouldn't do it. But where is the justice when they do it?
So let's say in cases like the George Floyd, the guy Derek was just convicted. Would you consider that? Would you consider that to be accountability?
I do to some degree because, like I said, before the George Floyd case, he should have already had his licensure revoked. Because if you look at his record and things that he done in the past, his intervention should have occurred long before the George Floyd incident. And that's what we don't want to see. We don't want to see an officer out of control for X amount of years without actually addressing their behavior. But that is one of the first unique cases. And I guess because of where we are and all the marches, they already knew if we don't convict this young man, then we're going to have a problem because America saw what happened. I mean, 9 minutes is a very long time. So, yes, I feel that that was actually justification for him to be convicted. And even now we're looking at them trying to overthrow it and try to say that let's just put him on probation. Well, again, the Leah Act actually will help support his conviction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of similar to like what we've always done historically is go to the federal government, go to the state, and kind of ask for some support in what we feel is our right and our just due. But I'm always like in this rock and hard place because the state always upholds the state.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Leah Act, like, you know, we got the George Floyd bill, we got the Emmett Till, like we have all of these bills. So the question is like, how is it you think that this bill will allow the state to hold its agents accountable?
Well, again, when you look at the Emmett Till bill, this act actually talks about lynching and abandoned lynching. And with it being national, it is called the Law Enforcement Accountability Act. And we want that to actually be signed to become a law. And that's where you start talking about the differences. All this stuff is sitting out there. Let's put it all under one particular identification. And now let's make it all a law. There are so many laws. When you even look at the Civil Rights Act, every 10 years, the president has to sign that. And really, every 10 years, we still haven't said to ourselves, this is it. It needs to be a law. And we saw, you know, this president is in office. Biden said he's going to do something to Black people. First, make the Civil Rights Act a law so that we don't have to look every 10 years and hope that the right president is in office to sign it. Make the Leah Act a law, make it an executive order so that we can start seeing some things change. There's no reason why that act needs to be signed every 10 years. That's ridiculous. And so at this point, we just need what we do is we give our vote away for free. No, if we put you in office, this is what you need to do. We have the right to in office. Vice President Harris, she is very familiar with the legal background because that was her profession. Once I will put the link in, and I'm sure Mr. Biggs will send it out to everyone. We need signatures on the Leah Act, and then we need to get it up to them. And you said y'all were going to get in office, do something for Black people. This is what needs to be done. Because we always saying they didn't do nothing. Well, what are we asking for them to do? You have to give the president something to sign. People talked about Barack and Obama and the fact that he did all this for the LGBTQ community. Well, guess what? They wrote laws that they wanted put up and he signed them. Well, here's our law, sign it. And that's what the Leah Act is. We have to be the change that we want to see. And we expect our law and political people in place to put these laws in place for us. Well, they haven't done it. They're not going to do it. Guess what? If we want to see it done, unfortunately, now we have to become our own politicians, our own representatives, and we have to write our own laws and put them into place.
Now, this Leah Act that you created, was this a solo project? This was just you alone, or was it you and a group of people that came together, pulled all this information, and kind of designed it?
Well, actually, it was me alone. Like I said, after I went to the march, I was just so moved. I've been an educator all my life, and the kids came to me and they looked at me and said, "They're like, what do we do next? What do we do?" I didn't have the answers. I was a child when Dr. King was. I
Yeah.
didn't march. I'm marching with y'all. What do you mean? And I started looking at my responsibility, and I said, you know, they do need some direction. And I slept. It took me 3 months to write the Leah Act. I had a paper beside my. I would wake up in the middle of the night and things would just hit me. Oh, I need to look into this, and I write it down. I don't have any background in politics, um, and I did a lot of research so that I knew what things and would pass and what problems we have with parts of the law. And I wrote the law. And then I had a couple people look it over. I had Miriam Terrain is educate a reading professor and an English professor that I had look at it. Then I had somebody from a political background just to make sure, like, is this good? And I had someone contact me from Florida. Of course, it's out on the web, and he was like, "That's excellent. Like, that's what we need to see done." So I wrote it independently.
Okay. Okay.
But it's called the Law Enforcement Accountability Act. I didn't write it for everybody to know who T. Taylor is. That's not why I wrote it. I wrote it because, when we are, and I'm going to go into a little religious spill for a minute. Everybody's not born a sound mind. It is a gift from God that we have sound mind and we're able to be born without any mental afflictions. And some people are touched, and I need you to use your gift to do certain things. And I just believe that I was tapped on the shoulder to actually get this bill in place to for our people for whatever reason. And I
Mhm.
wrote it. It's not going to be called, the Amber Act was named after a young girl named Amber. This is the Law Enforcement Accountability Act because it's what's needed at this time. It's not about me. I'm just a small individual out here. It's about our people.
Miss
Okay.
Taylor, have you vetted it through any of the like policy agencies that kind of funnel those things to politicians and things like that?
I actually have, and like I said, once you go, if you look at and get ready, the Black Caucus, Black Congressional Caucus, and I'm not going to blame them 100%, but I've sent it to congressmen, to lawyers, to not lawyers, to politicians, to different people that I thought would help push it. But at the time, how many people sent? I have the answer. I have the answer. I don't know how many people sent bills to them or things they wanted because I see a lot of smaller bills addressing one issue. So I have sent it out to a lot of people. I don't know why it's being lost, but I am working on all I need is the right eyes to look at it, and the right eyes looking at it will get it brought to the public eye. So I found one particular congresswoman that I am trying to get it into her hands directly for her to look at it. And guess what? It was sent to them way back in August of last year. So if they look it up, they'll find it. And if you pull up, it's on change.org, the petition, you'll see who I sent it to because it's all listed right there.
Hmm.
So right now, my biggest thing is even even getting on public forums like the front porch discussions, so that people see it and share it. as a people, we need to do it ourselves. I don't know what reason it's not getting the um
You know.
attention it needs to. And I'm thinking somebody says
Yeah,
systematic problems. They're concerned with being reelected. I know we talked about police reform. If I sit up there and I sign this, and they're concerned. I'm not trying to be elected. I'm not concerned. I'm concerned about our race and making sure that we get fair treatment. So I don't care. I don't have anything on the line. They have things on the line, and they're not willing to. Oh, the gun. This group paid for this for me, so I can't say nothing about that. I don't have anybody that's supporting me financially that can, that I don't need to answer to.
Mhm.
So as a people, right now, I think the best thing to do is to get this out and start promoting it, and then see how many signatures we can get to take it to a national level. Have you considered starting it on the state level? So, Mr. Assembly, I've sent it again, even to our state Congressman Price has it. I spoke to his secretary personally, who told me that they were going to look into it, and I didn't get any answer. So I've tried, and I have a city, Baltimore City. They read it, they love it, but because of the way it's written, it really needs to be done nationally. But I will take the adoption of a city or a police force to start it and get it promoted. You know what I'm saying? So anybody willing to work with me, I'll work with at this point.
I would say I admire your conviction. I admire your energy in pushing forth this bill. And I wish you a lot of strength because the work that you're doing, like many have carried that torch, and it's a heavy one to bear.
yeah.
So I wish you much success with that, and I'm gonna sign it. I don't know how much my one signature push it, but you got my signature.
I'm about to send it to Joe. I don't know if he can put it in the I'm sending it to him right
Yeah,
now.
I tried.
So
I tried putting the link in the chat, but it's not coming as a link. So
oh, okay.
everybody, if they'll just go to my Facebook page or go to the Front Porch Discussions page, before the evening is out, I will make sure I have the petition link. And I also when we started promoting the True Vision show, the link for the act itself is already there. So it's been
Right.
out. It's been pushed out several times. I'll push it out again, but I'll make sure I put the petition, the link for the petition out also, so that everybody can see it. And I think even in one of them, I did the link for the petition. And if you go to the petition, it'll take you to the act itself. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I've enjoyed this, and it seems like everybody who's watching has enjoyed it too. I think you have something that's very big and very great on your hands. Like my boy Kev Fauntleroy said, it's systemic. It's gonna be, and like Eric says, there'll be a lot of hurdles to jump over, because they have some things in place that benefit them, and nobody wants to give up that control and start evening the playing field and leveling things off, and then they got people that's in their pockets, putting a little
Right.
something in their pockets to move certain things, so other things get pushed to the side. America tries to make like this is a big issue for them. I think it's more of an issue for people of color, because it definitely ain't nobody else worried. They don't have to teach their son to, hey, be still, don't run, don't open the glove compartment, don't do this, don't do that, don't go in the store and touch that. No, they don't have those worries in their life. So for them, it is what it is. They may not want people of color hurt, but it's not affecting your house. So
Right.
you kind of, oh, don't do it, and then you go about your life. So it's gonna be like Eric said, it's gonna be an uphill battle. It's gonna be a strong one, but hopefully somebody will pick it up and run with it, and get some things in place so that across the nation, our officers are held accountable to a certain standard. Now, I say that, but I will also want to say this: there are a lot of great officers out there that hold
Agreed.
the line. They do what they're supposed to do. They do it the way they're supposed to do. They will intervene when they see things. They don't agree with the things that are happening. So I don't want any of those officers to take offense to this. Um, so
And the thing is, there's a lot of nepotism. Some of those officers, those good officers, they can't move up in the ranks
Yeah,
because of like I said, the level of nepotism. The Leah Act actually helps them because if you have points on your licensure, you can't even apply to move up. So those good officers that have been trying to make that change in the police forces, they need to make this actually makes it better for them to actually now get and there's levels to their evaluation. I said every 2 years, it could be every three, but now if you're given an distinguished evaluation, then that helps you to move up to become a higher level, or like I said, it depends on whether you in a deputy situation, sheriff, or lieutenant. It helps those officers actually secure those positions.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Miss
I
Taylor.
thank you.
Oh,
Anybody else got something?
I was gonna say I just tried to Google the Law Enforcement Accountability Act, and what came up was the Police Accountability Act.
Right. Type in Law Enforcement Accountability Act, then type in the letters LEAA afterwards. And that's the other thing. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't have enough hits that when you type it in, you won't pull up anything.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that it's being stifled, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I encourage you, and I am honored that you took the time to get on the front porch discussion with us and to talk about this because it's much needed. And I would love to see this passed. I would love to see the agencies around the United States really be able to finally be held accountable for something. So I am, you go, girl. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you. And like I said, what the message to anybody who's listening is to pull it up, to sign it, and then share it. Share it so that we can start to spread it, get enough signatures. With enough signatures, we just send it directly to Biden. We don't even need to mess around with our local. Send it to Biden. You wanted our vote. Here, sign. Make it an executive order and sign the Leah Act.
Cool. Also, I saw that your student was up here. He let me know your student's Daniel Bryant.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Good
I'm trying
dude.
to look at the messages at the bottom as they come across.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good dude. I like his family a lot. His mom, his sister, him, they're real good people. And Miss Marla, that's my cousin.
Yes, definitely. That's my
Good people.
soror.
Good people. Good people. So, with that being said, again, we thank you for being on today. We had a great time. I think people got a lot of good information. You all that are out there, please make sure you go and check my page and check the front porch discussion page and find the link to this act. Share it with your friends and family. Let's push it out there. Let's see if we can get some signatures and get this thing moving so we can make change. All right. And
Yeah.
Marla said, hello. Hey, Marla, I see you. All right. So y'all have a good evening. We don't have the DJ to take us out tonight, unfortunately,
Oh,
but
DJ.
he's there in spirit, and we'll be back next week. All right,
All
same
right.
time, same
Thank
bat
you for
station.
your time. Thank you for having me on the show. And for everybody who tuned in, I want to thank you all for participating.
All
Good
right,
work.
Thank you, Miss Taylor.
You're
thank
Thank
you.
welcome.
Thank
Y'all
you.
have a good evening and a
Have a
great
good
weekend.
Good evening, everyone.
Peace, all.